There have been over 20,000 players to ever play a game in the history of Major League Baseball. A far more exclusive club, though, lives in Cooperstown, where the Baseball Hall of Fame has inducted just 270 of those players, which is a smidge over 1% of all players ever. Only 6 of those elite 270 guys were pure closers that made it to the Hall of Fame. Goose Gossage, Mariano Rivera, Lee Smith, Bruce Sutter, Trevor Hoffman, and Raleigh Fingers. It's about as exclusive as a sports club can possibly get, but there's still one guy that's notably missing from this club. His name is Billy Wagner, and by all measures, he's the 3rd best closer in baseball history. A 7-time All-Star, a member of the 400 Save Club, and arguably the most efficient strikeout pitcher in the history of the sport. Wagner is entering his 9th year on the voting ballot. Last year, he got to within 7% of the necessary amount to enter the Hall of Fame, but he's running out of time. Today, we're going to talk about his worthy case, and why his admission to Cooperstown is long overdue at this point, but better late than never. If you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the Jolly Olive channel. The best way to start any reflection on the wonderful career of the best left-handed closer of all time is probably by letting you know that he wasn't even a natural lefty. Billy Wagner broke his right arm twice at a young age by playing football, and during recovery, he taught himself how to throw a baseball left-handed. The interesting thing about Wagner's minor league days is that he never truly failed as a starting pitcher, which is typically the story of any relief pitcher, great or not. He compiled a 3.13 ERA in 373 innings over 63 starts, but when he was called up by the Houston Astros, they simply needed a short inning reliever, and Wagner's career path had been set. He was instantly a sensation with a 2.44 ERA in over 50 innings in his rookie season. Then, in his sophomore season, he set the major league record for strikeout per 9 rate with his 14.4 mark, usurping the record set by Rob Dibble of the Reds just a few years prior. Ah, Rob Dibble, every MLB The Show 23 player's first great card in Diamond Dynasty. Then the next year, he broke his own record by pushing the mark to 14.6. Then the next year, he did it again for good measure. While this mark has been met and eclipsed 58 times since that final 1999 season, it had only been done 4 times prior, and Wagner owned 3 of those marks. It's an understatement to say that when he came up, Wagner's stuff was something the league had never really seen before. From 1996 to 1999, Wagner was 3rd among all pitchers with at least 200 innings in ERA, WHIP, and fielding independent pitching, trailing only Mariano Rivera and Trevor Hoffman in all 3. You'll be hearing a lot more of those 2 names throughout this video. The last of those seasons was the most special in 1999. He struck out 124 hitters in 74 innings with a 1.57 ERA, placing 4th in Cy Young voting that year ahead of the likes of Kevin Brown and Trevor Hoffman. It still stands as one of the most untouchable single-season performances ever by a closing pitcher. Billy Wagner was pumping 100-mile-per-hour fastballs with ease in an era where that simply was not commonplace yet, and combined with the slider sitting in the high 80s that could touch 90, he was simply a different breed of southpaw. For reference, in 2002, he led the major leagues with 159 pitches at 100 miles per hour or above. Second on the list was, you guessed it, Bartolo Colon, who only had 12 that season. But, you know, in the years since, he's still pitching at 50 years old in the Dubai League, so who's the real winner here? Elbow surgery slowed him down a considerable amount in his age 28 season, but little did everyone know that Wagner still had 10 years left in the tank ahead of him after this rock bottom point. He won Comeback Player of the Year the following season with a career-best 39 saves and rounded out his final 3 seasons in Houston in impressive fashion. Of pitchers with at least 200 innings from 2001 to 2003, Wagner led all of them with his 0.95 whip, tied Mariano Rivera with 118 saves, and trailed only the great Pedro Martinez in ERA at 2.29. But after voicing his displeasure with the state of the Houston Astros following the 03 season, the front office abruptly traded their all-star closer to Philadelphia, thus beginning Wagner's near-decade tour of the East Coast. He got even better in his new uniform, with an ERA 140% better than league average by ERA+, and 59 saves in 2 seasons for Philly, though the club failed to make the playoffs in both years. He got in some trouble when his new team was failing similarly to his old one, but we'll dive into his comments later. He parlayed that success into a 4-year contract with the New York Mets, signing a $43 million deal, and he was worth every penny there too. He helped the Mets claim their first National League East Division title in 18 years in his first season in the Big Apple, and is fondly remembered as one of the best closers to ever don the blue and orange. He was also great in 2007 and 2008, where nothing of significance happened to the Mets late in either of those seasons. Nothing at all. He saved over 100 games in 3 seasons, which ranks top 5 in franchise history, and during his time from 2004 to 2010 where he played for Philly, New York, the Red Sox, and the Atlanta Braves in his 30s, Wagner managed a 2.03 ERA and 2.12 ERA+, trailing only Joe Nathan and Mariano Rivera in both of those stats. We should mention that last season in 2010 with the Braves because it's arguably one of the greatest retirement seasons in the history of baseball. Billy Wagner, at age 38, coming off a torn UCL from just a year prior, averaged 96.2 miles per hour on his fastball still, which even by today's standards is serious velocity. Of pitchers with at least 50 innings thrown in that 2010 season, his 13.5 strikeout per 9 rate trailed only Carlos Marmol, what a name, remember that dude? And placed top 3 yet again with his 1.43 ERA and 2.75 ERA+. That ERA+ mark is the 4th best of the expansion era by any player aged 38 or older. His 37 saves that season got him into the 400 save club. His final 3 seasons are incredibly impressive considering his age and injury trouble. Of players aged 36 or older, Wagner is the only one in baseball history to compile at least 100 innings in multiple combined seasons with an ERA under 2. Not even Mariano Rivera could match his sheer excellence in the late stages of his career, albeit with a larger sample size. At the end of it all, Wagner recorded 9 30-save seasons, which trails only, you guessed it, Mariano Rivera and Trevor Hoffman in the past 40 years of play. The only guys that are approaching this mark are Kenley Jansen, Craig Kimbrell, and Aroldis Chapman, but who knows if they'll get there. He never got a World Series ring in the end, but with his sheer volume, counting stats, and impressive peaks both early and late in his career, there's no doubt in my mind that Billy Wagner is a top 3 closer of all time. Now that we've thrown all the stats and stories out there, let's see how he sizes up amongst the best pitchers, relievers or not, when we examine his career in a vacuum. For someone who is widely considered to be the number 3 guy on the all-time closers list, Wagner gets the silver and gold medal on a lot of important statistics when looking at his career as a whole. With a minimum qualifier of 900 innings pitched in a career, Wagner ranks first among all MLB pitchers in batting average against at 187 and hit per 9 rate at 5.99. His career ERA plus of 187 is second best in MLB history, behind only the great Mariano Rivera. His 0.99 career whip is second only to Jacob deGrom, a pitcher he could pass in the near future for the all-time lead. He was the second most efficient strikeout pitcher of all time at 33.2% on his strikeout rate, trailing only an active Kenley Jansen who has a 36.4% mark. The guy whose name usually follows Mariano Rivera, that being Trevor Hoffman, is not as far above Wagner as many people might think. It's hard to compare just about anybody to Mo, but when lined up against Hoffman, Wagner has the San Diego legend beat in ERA, whip, batting average against, ERA+, strikeout per 9 rate, and trails him by just 0.2 WAR in their career numbers. Hoffman did pitch 2 extra years and has about 189 more innings than Wagner, but it doesn't change the fact that, at the very least, these two relievers are very much of the same caliber outside of pure counting stats. Obviously, the one thing Hoffman has Wagner beat that matters a lot to voters is saves, being a part of the 600 save club. A big deterrent that feeds into a lot of doubt towards Wagner's Cooperstown case are his mediocre numbers in October baseball. In his playoff career, he never got to pitch in the World Series, and he pitched a mere 11 2/3 innings across 14 outings, allowing 13 runs and 3 home runs. In fairness, this shouldn't count for nothing, and this is the kind of thing where a reliever like Mariano Rivera has a massive advantage with 42 postseason saves and 5 World Series rings. But the regular season is just as important, and while counting statistics benefit the compilers, Wagner ranks highly in the one that matters for closers: saves. While only 2 pitchers are members of the seemingly impossible 600 save club in Mo and Trevor Hoffman, that number only rises to 8 members when we talk about the 400 save club. Wagner clocks in at 6 all-time here with 422 saves, though he could be passed up by next season with Kenley Jansen and Craig Kimbrell both within arm's reach. So with all of this being said, let's now talk about his current status on the ballot. Billy Wagner got 68.1% of the vote in his 8th year on the Hall of Fame ballot last year. He has 2 years of eligibility remaining, and he's closer than he's ever been to getting over the hump. For reference, at the beginning of his ballot tenure, he barely hung on to eligibility. He grew less than 1% in his first 3 years, hovering just above 10%, but has since risen 57% from 2018 to last year. For those who are unaware, a player must receive votes on 75% of the ballots to be inducted, and perhaps Wagner might get the votes he finally needs with Scott Rowland leaving the ballot from last year. Still, he'll have to compete with an equally deserving Todd Helton, who seems next in line for induction. Also, new additions like Joe Mauer and Adrian Beltre have a shot at getting in on their first ballot as well, and votes will certainly be spread to players like David Wright and Chase Utley too. But it's not exaggerating to say that Wagner is overdue at this point, and his entry to Cooperstown should have been a done deal by now. An unfortunate factor for Hall of Fame cases also happens to be the media and player relations of that specific player. And while Billy Wagner seemed to always shine on the field, he did run into some hot water at certain points in the clubhouse during his 16-year career. For example, Wagner got himself traded after criticizing Houston's front office, he ran into confrontation with Philly teammates when blasting the team's performance late in 2005, and went on a tirade in the midst of a 2008 collapse by the Mets, angry by his teammates' lack of availability for interviews following a disappointing loss. While these were certainly headline-grabbing stories in the wrong way, I don't think Billy Wagner was necessarily wrong for anything that he said either. He was just an ultra-competitive guy that wanted his shot at a ring. This was a guy that excelled in all but one season of his career, and more often than not, the roster built around him failed him when it mattered most. Because of this, Billy Wagner shares in the confusion of why he hasn't been inducted into Cooperstown. In a telling interview with the New York Post, he opened up about his perplexed viewpoint on the voters committee. In a quote, he said, "I can't do nothing about the numbers that are out there. I don't know how to build my case when the case is based on numbers. I don't want to say that it's a personal thing because you can't really say I wasn't good if my numbers are what they are. The only thing I can say is I've always been accountable for the good, bad, as I took responsibility for my actions. But numbers-wise, there's no case to be made for me not being in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, opinions are subjective and vary based on team allegiance, bias, and other factors. But an opinion I certainly value and trust is that of Chris Rose, who had this to say about Billy Wagner when we discussed his case on an episode of Baseball Today. The name that still stands out to me that I really need to get in is Billy Wagner, man.
Yes,
I think Billy Wagner, if Billy Wagner doesn't get in, there's a lot of other relievers that I also think are not going to get in that probably deserve to.
A little perspective on Billy Wagner, because to me, that is the most interesting case. When I was watching this guy, did I feel like I was watching a Hall of Famer? And this isn't a shot at Craig Biggio. Not once did I ever feel like I was watching a Hall of Famer. When Billy Wagner came out, I was like, damn, man, this is special. And it feels like a Hall of Famer.
So that's where things currently stand as of right now. In a couple of months in January of next year, the results will be announced. By then, this video could prove to be a celebrating point for Wagner's overdue induction. But my greater fear is that this video stays relevant another year, with Wagner getting omitted from the Hall of Fame once again, pushing him to the brink of falling off the ballot in year 10. Hopefully, it doesn't come to that, because we've seen too many deserving faces, past and present, miss their chance to get into Cooperstown when they certainly earned such an honor in their career. Wagner's induction could also pave the way for modern closers like Craig Kimbrell and Kenley Jansen to get their due when the time comes. It all rests on the voters now. And that'll do it for today's Jolly Olive video. If you guys enjoyed the video, once again, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you to the DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring today's video. Right now, if you download their app and use promo code OLIVE, you can bet $5 and win $150 in bonus bets instantly. Now, I know there's not a lot of baseball to bet on right now, but there's plenty of other sports that you can get in on the action for at the DraftKings Sportsbook, like NFL football Sundays or some basketball action as well. You can combine multiple bets for a same-day parlay if you're watching all the games on Sunday, and you have a shot at a huge payday. And even if sports betting is not yet available in your state, you can still get in on the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. There's a lot to do on their app. It's free, it's easy to use, so download it right now and get started in your sports betting career by using my promo code OLIVE. Bet $5, win $150 in bonus bets. It's very simple, it's a great offer, and it's around at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Thank you to them for sponsoring today's video. Now, I'll see you guys next time.